So we reached the halfway mark with our season previews with the Minnesota Wild today. Apologies I didn't get this up yesterday. Yesterday was a little bit busy. The Draisaitl extension was about all I had time to talk about. So you're going to see two season previews today, that being Minnesota, and later today you'll get Montreal. So obviously that's a good treat for y'all. But regardless, the Minnesota Wild have been a team that has, honestly, when you look in terms of their progression, they've regressed the last couple of years. But they're hoping that with a new coach for a full season, some new adds to the team, may not be huge adds, but you do have some guys who could be playing their full seasons here. It looks like this team is going to want to make another push for the postseason. So first off, starting off in 21-22, where the team went 53, 22, and 7 for 113 points. They were 5th in the National Hockey League, and they lost in the first round to the St. Louis Blues in 6 games. That is a trend that happens a lot for the Wild. You go into the first round, you lose in 6. That's kind of what's happened the last couple of seasons. It's unfortunate, but it's how it is for this team. In 22-23, they went 46, 25, and 11 for 103 points. They were 11th in the NHL that last year. They had a really good second half, and they ended up losing in the first round yet again to the Dallas Stars in 6 games. This team has at the time, this team had a really solid roster. Gustafsson was playing at a great level. The team looked really exciting, and then get to the first round and yet again it's another same result. Now this past year, they didn't even make it to the playoffs. They got a 39, 34, and 9 record for 87 points. They were 20th in the NHL. They came close at the end, but obviously it was not enough. It was too little too soon, or too little too late. That's how you say it. But anyhow, the Wild are definitely a team that is looking to get back into the playoffs after missing a year, but it's a wonder, can they do it? Because that Central Division is extremely competitive when you look at it in the full broad perspective. But they did lose and bring in some guys. Nobody big, though. You start off with their departures. You have Adam Beckman, Alex Goligoski, Vinny Lettieri, Jake Lucchini, and Dakota Mermis. So, honestly, it's not that big of guys. You lose some depth forwards and some depth defensemen. Nothing really big of loss there. They didn't do a whole lot. The only things they really did was sign guys to extensions, draft Zeev Boyum. It's about all they did, to be honest. The guys they brought in, though, you have Jakob Trenin, Travis Boyd, and Jacob Lauko. So some good depth options there for the forward core, which we'll get into here later on in this video. But regardless, they really didn't do a lot. It's the truth. They didn't do a ton. They didn't do a lot that really kind of, was eyeballing. They mainly just re-signed some guys, kind of getting their cap structure to work. Because, again, I say it in every Wild video, they are still paying Parise and Sutter, but this is the last year where it's a substantial amount. After this year, I think it's only a little under $2 million combined for those guys for the rest of the contract. So they're going to have a lot of cap room next offseason, so I would expect them to make some big moves. But right now we're focusing on this season with this overall team. And your Hockey News projected lineups, not my projected lineups, go as follows. You have Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson-Ek, and Matt Boldy as your first line. Then you got Marcus Johansson, Marco Rossi, and Matt Zuccarello as your second line. So not a bad top 6. You got some youth in there with Rossi and Boldy, guys who recently just signed contract. I think Boldy did, not Rossi. But regardless, you got some young players filtering there into your lineup. And we'll see how they do. I know Kaprizov, we know what he can do. We know he can play at a legitimate NHL level. We know he can do that. So I'm not really worried about Kaprizov. Eriksson-Ek, great two-way center. We'll see what happens this year, too, with him. But overall, the top 6 is a mix of young and old guys. But I think some of those old guys could find their way out of Minnesota after next season. I'm not ruling it out, to be honest with you. Your bottom 6, you got Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman, and Jakob Trenin as your third line. Liam Ogren, Marat Kuznetsov, and Frederick Gaudreau as your fourth line. Then for some extra guys, you have Jacob Lauko, Travis Boyd, and Brendan Gaunce. So honestly, just some guys they brought in who will fit in with the depth. Like Lauko, Boyd, they don't even crack the main roster. Trenin, good third liner, physical, he can fight. So that's not a bad ad there, definitely. But again, some more young guys in that bottom six because Nadinov coming from the KHL. He played a little bit last year, but this is going to be his first full season. Ogren came in a little bit last year, if I'm right, and I actually liked how he played. So I think if he can get a full spot and earn that spot out of training camp, I think it could be exciting for Minnesota. But again, you have some young pieces in this lineup, but overall, it's not as exciting as some of those other teams in that Central Division. I hate to break it to the Wild, but it's just not that exciting. Their defense is definitely interesting, though. You have Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber as your first pairing. Then you have Jake Middleton and Jared Spurgeon as your second pairing. Declan Chisholm and Zach Bogosian as your third pairing, and then John Merrill is your extra defender. So, some interesting names there. Again, the defense last year was the biggest issue with this team, I would say. Not because they were bad, but because they were injured. A lot of their guys got hurt midway through the season or at the beginning of the season, and it really affected them in the first half of the year. And Faber especially took a really big step last year and looked really exciting. So again, if Faber can take another step, you're looking at a very exciting team next year. And I think he honestly, I wouldn't say he glues that blue line together, but he is a big part in why that blue line does a lot of damage every single season. And I definitely think the top four is impressive. I think the top four is great. And Middleton is a very good defender who's very underrated. Same with Spurgeon, same with Brodin. Those are all four solid defenders for sure. Your goaltending is where there's been some talks. Marc-Andre Fleury heading into his last season, and Philip Gustafsson is your backup goaltender as of right now, with Jesper Wallstedt knocking on the door to come in. Obviously, we don't know if Wallstedt's going to get time this year. I'd imagine he will. He'll play a few games. But to be honest with you, he's not going to be someone who is an NHL regular unless any of those guys get injured. If Fleury is out for an extended period of time, then obviously Wallstedt will come in. But I think Wallstedt's time, and I think he knows that his time is coming not this season, but the following year. Maybe they trade Gustafsson, maybe they make a move, and then they try and, obviously get him in that way. But as of right now, he is projected to be the third string goalie and spending the season down with the Iowa Wild. So that's basically the whole roster. The roster isn't too bad. I like what Bill Guerin's done. He's made a few moves that have been a little bit questionable for me, but I do think that this team overall can be exciting. They have some young forwards. They're going to score for sure. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be in the race. They're not a bottom-feeding team. It's just a matter of can they get over that playoff hump that everyone's been, talking about? Can they get past that first round? The bigger question you should be asking is can they make the playoffs, to be honest, because that Central is going to be competitive. You have Chicago, who's not very good, and then you have a lot of teams just battling it out for those wild card spots. You have Minnesota, St. Louis. I put Utah in there because people think they're going to be competitive this coming year. Winnipeg will be in the mix as well, and then, of course, Nashville and Colorado and Dallas. So, again, very competitive division. If Minnesota can get in, it'd be impressive. But if they don't, it won't surprise me. This team's building a pretty solid and exciting young core that you're going to look forward to in the future. And again, maybe a full season of John Hynes at the helm will help things out. So looking at your Hockey News' yearbook and fantasy guide for 24-25, they have the Wild 6th in the Central Division. Their cup odds are 55-1. And the biggest X factor facing this team right now is individual success stories are important, but the Wild need more than a few players to set the tone. Case in point, not even Kaprizov's top 10 goal output could salvage the season. The Wild are at their best when everyone is contributing. So that's exactly what, honestly, that could probably go for almost any team in the NHL, to be honest, besides maybe the teams at the top. If your big guys and your little guys aren't, sounds weird, but if your main guys and your depth guys aren't performing, that's a better way to say it. If they're not performing, then the team is going to really struggle. Even if Kaprizov puts up an amazing season, we know what he can do. We've seen him put up incredible numbers the last couple of seasons. But let's say he gets hurt. If he gets injured, this team is in trouble. Unless if Boldy and Rossi and those guys take a big step this year. But everybody needs to contribute from this team. They aren't at the stage. They don't have a superstar, no disrespect to Kaprizov, that can carry a team like that. Kaprizov, I think, is very valuable, and I think he can and honestly does carry teams. But honestly, he's someone who is he's not at that like McDavid level where he can just put people on his back. That's the biggest thing with Kaprizov. But regardless, this team solid. They'll be competitive. It's just a matter of whether or not you think they will get into the playoffs. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe down below. And we're on the push to 3,000 subscribers. We're a little over 150 away, so we're really going to push hard. I know content's been difficult the last couple of weeks, but we're really going to push hard and try and get ourselves to that milestone and just keep making videos and keep having fun. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.